Straight ahead and pose to pose are different approaches for creating animation. Straight ahead animation means creating each frame in sequence from beginning to end. Pose to pose animation means creating the key poses for each action first and then filling in the poses that come in between. Straight ahead has the advantage of spontaneity and liveliness, and sometimes it produces surprise magic that couldn't be planned. The disadvantages are that it's easy for your motion to drift off track or for your sizes to change. Also, you might miss the timing you're after or miss the point of the scene. In general, it's just more error-prone, which can waste time. Pose-to-pose animation has the advantage of putting more focus into getting key poses just right, and getting exactly the timing you want. You're less likely to make mistakes and get off track, so it saves time. The downside is that the movement might feel a little unnatural, and it just doesn't deliver the surprise magic that can come from improvising as you draw. Let's take a closer look at how these different approaches work. Let's start by looking at straight ahead animation. Here's our old bouncing ball example. I'm just going to start in and go one frame at a time. I don't know exactly how many frames I'm going to use, I'm just feeling it out as I go. I'm keeping my onion skinning feature on so you can see the past frames I've drawn. I know at the bottom of the fall, before it hits the ground, I want it stretched out, so I'm trying to transition into that shape. Then there's the squashed frame and another stretch as the ball rebounds from the impact. I'm trying to be careful to keep my sizes correct as I go. That gets harder and harder to do as I get further and further from that starting drawing. There, let's see how that looks. Now let's do another ball bounce, but this time we'll work pose to pose. I'm starting by doing the peaks of each bounce and the squash each time it hits the ground. These will be my key drawings. By doing these first, I know exactly how many bounces there will be and how much shorter they get as they go. Then I'm going to find the most important pose that comes in between the first two keys. This is called a breakdown. In this case, that's the fully stretched out frame that comes just before the squash. All the other frames in this part of the sequence are gradually becoming that breakdown. I could go through and do all the breakdowns for each bounce first, but in this case, I'm just going to animate one bounce at a time. I have enough drawings that the motion of the ball is fairly well defined, so at this point I'm just in-betweening, or filling in missing frames to smooth out the motion. Another advantage of pose-to-pose animation is that the lead animator could do keys and breakdowns and then hand off the scene to an assistant to do all the in-betweens. So now I'm just repeating the process for the other bounces. Let's see how that looks. Next, I wanted to show you pose-to-pose animation in a more modern sense. This is how you work when you have a computer-tweened animation. You would have computer-tweened animation if you're working in a 3D program, or with a 2D puppet rig in Flash or Toon Boom. I have a ball again, but this time the ball is an object that we can move around. The first frame I have defined as a keyframe. So if I come out further down my timeline and move the ball, you can see in the onion skinning that the computer is calculating the position for each frame starting at my first position. Wherever I drop this ball will be the next keyframe. So the in-betweens it's giving us aren't right. They're totally even and in a straight line. To fix that, I'm going to use the easing graph. I'm in Toon Boom Harmony right now, but other 2D and 3D computer animation programs will have a similar style of graph. By adjusting this graph, we change the slow in and slow out of our object as it moves between the two keyframes we've defined. Specifically, this graph is for the Y position of the ball, so this will change how the ball moves vertically. We want the ball to start falling slowly and then get really fast by the time it touches the ground. So I'm going to use this handle to adjust the curve of the graph. The steeper the curve, the faster the ball. Here we're on our second keyframe, and I'm going to pull the handle up to make the curve steeper. That means it'll be faster. Then I'm going to switch to the first keyframe and use the handle to make the curve shallower at the beginning. That's where we want it slower. Now let's apply that and check the ball's path. There, since we've added easing to the ball's vertical movement, it now moves in a nice arc. So now we can go position our other keyframes and adjust their easing in the same way. So now our arcs are there, but we don't have any squash and stretch as the ball falls and impacts. Let's put that in. Let's start with the first squash. I can use this transform box to change the scale of the ball. But you can see it's auto-tweening the scale as well as the position. That's not what we want. So I'm going to back up a little bit to where we want the stretched out frame. I'll adjust the ball here so it's stretched. When I manipulate the ball in this way, this frame becomes a new keyframe. So now you can see how all the tweens changed based on this new stretched frame. Now I just need to do the same thing coming out of the bounce. It's almost right, but I think the ball starts stretching too soon as it falls. So I'm going to go up to this position and make a new keyframe where the ball is still fully round. There, that looks like what we want. Now we'll just go through and repeat the process for the other bounces. You can see how this is basically the same as pose-to-pose animation. We set our most important positions and then go back and set the breakdown positions that come between them. However, now the computer is doing all the in-betweening. There, let's go ahead and see how it looks. Great. So if you're going to be doing 3D animation, you'll basically always be working pose to pose. But if you're doing stop motion, you'll always be working straight ahead, since you have to photograph the frames in sequence. In 2D animation, however, you have the option to mix and match. Here are some other related principles you might want to check out. Or you can just go ahead and go to the next video. I'll see you there!